What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to my tiny garage. My name's Jared, and on my bench today we have a Poulan Pro pole saw. This is a 2-cycle pole saw that was given to me by a customer to work on. Now, it's important to note that this machine has not run in quite some time. This was, from the story that I got, pulled out of a real estate sale, and it hadn't run quite a long time before that. So it's hard to say when exactly this thing was run and what exactly the shape was that it was put away in. It looks very clean. It looks very well taken care of, the best that I can tell, but it certainly has sat for quite a while. Our goal here today with this is going to be to get it to run and hopefully perform. The customer would like to use this, so this is something that we don't really want to scrap if we don't have to, but we don't really know the condition either. So we're going to be going over this thing with a pretty fine-tooth comb and getting it back to hopefully operational condition and back into service. So I guess the first place to start here, is it going to run at all? That's a good question. So let's pop out the spark plug, and we're going to put some fuel down in the spark plug hole, and then we'll pull it over and see if it'll fire off. The fuel lines, well, let's just say neither one of them are connected anymore, and one of them is missing entirely, so I'm sure the carburetor is past its prime. Looking at our spark plug, honestly, it looks pretty decent. It doesn't look used that hard, a little oily, but it's a champion plug, so that's a good sign. Don't hear any crazy noises as we're pulling it over, so that's a good sign. Alright, let's drizzle a little bit of fuel down into our cylinder. Put our plug back in and pull it over and see if it tries to run at all. Alright, moment of truth. Our switch is on. Will it try to go? Well, it certainly tried to run. That's a good sign. That's a very good sign. Behind the air cleaner looks okay. Looks like our air cleaner cover is busted back in here. Let's try to drizzle a little bit of fuel down actually directly right into the intake manifold. Try a little bit more and see if we can get anything out of it this way. All right, here we go. Okay, well, I'd say that's a very positive outlook. That's a very positive outlook indeed. Well then, let's jump down in here and see about getting this carburetor off, and we're gonna try to rebuild that. In case you don't know, Poulan Pro is actually made by Husqvarna. Husqvarna is actually the manufacturer of the Poulan Pro line. Poulan Pro is a cheaper line, I guess what I would call more of a box store type brand, but it is actually manufactured by Husqvarna, as a matter of fact. Looking at our earbox here, it looks like it's cracked on the back side. We might be able to fix that. I'll have to take a look into that then a little bit later on, but yeah, might be able to fix that. Alright, now the carburetor should just pop right off of here. But it seems to be pretty stuck. There we go. Disconnect our throttle linkage right there. Okay. Very good. In case you don't know here as well, you can see the piston down in there through the intake. I don't know if you probably won't be able to see it on camera, but I'm just pulling it over slowly and looking at it. And it looks really good. It doesn't look scored up or anything, on this side anyway, so that's a positive thing. Alright, let's hop over to our workbench and see about getting this thing disassembled for some ultrasonic action here. Alright, let's get our carburetor all torn apart here. Get all the old fuel line removed off of here. Stuff's nice and brittle. Seemed to run pretty well, so I'm pretty hopeful with what we might be able to get out of this. Seems like rebuilding 2-cycle carburetors, for me, usually goes like 50-50. It's not that I don't know how to do it or anything like that. It just seems like sometimes it works okay and sometimes it doesn't. I think a lot of that has to do with the brand of carburetor, if it's a good brand or if it's aftermarket or what it is. So this one here is a Zama carburetor. So I was able to find the kit to rebuild it. So we're gonna try our best to clean this up and rebuild it. I do have an aftermarket carburetor here for it if we need it, but I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to rebuild this one. Gasket actually came off of there pretty nicely. Okay, let's remove our plunger bulb. This is definitely stuck in place here. Here we go. Boy, that was in there. Okay, here's door number 1. Our Welch plug is where it should be. Diaphragm and gasket. Well, this looks pretty good. Here's our other side. Reed valve and gasket. Honestly, this really looks pretty clean. I don't really see a whole lot of fuel residue on it. There's a little bit right there. But honestly, not bad at all. Not bad at all. Sort of wondering to myself if maybe they didn't run it out of fuel and such before it was stored. That would be rare, but not unheard of. Definitely rare though, and usually the ones that I come across. But looking at the button on the diaphragm, and it hardly looks used. There's a little bit of shine to it, perhaps, but really not much wear at all, to be completely honest with you. Take out the needle and seat. Needle wasn't stuck in there. Yeah, there's a little bit of old fuel in there, but really not bad at all. It's honestly looks really good. There's a little screen right there, and even the screen looks very clean. See if we can pop that out of here, that screen. There we go. Yeah, I can see right through the jet. Clear to the other side. Well, that's pretty cool. I have a lot of hope for this. I'm not gonna bother taking that out. I don't really think that's necessary. Well, all right. Let's get all these pieces, the ones that we're going to clean anyway, into a jar and get this into the ultrasonic for a little well-needed bath and cleanup. I know I've talked about it before, but my go-to cleaner for this is Simple Green, the aircraft grade, because it doesn't tarnish the aluminum on all these parts. But it seems to work really well. I'm going to put everything in here. We don't necessarily going to reuse it all, but I'm just going to put it all in there. So I like to use Simple Green, and then I like to put some Dawn dish soap in there to help get rid of any of the grease and little deposits. The bubbles are free. A little free bubble show for you. Alright, let that marinate there a little bit while we get the ultrasonic ready. Ew. Okay, we have our carburetor all out of the ultrasonic. It's been run through and cleaned. We got all the soap off of it, and we should be ready to reassemble. One thing I wanted to point out that I didn't realize until after I already had it cleaned, I didn't take the needles out of here. I usually like to try to do that when I run it through the ultrasonic. It completely slipped my mind in the disassembly there. But just for a note for anybody else doing this on their own or such, you probably want to take those needles out and run it through without. I'd forgotten to, so we're going to run with it. I don't expect they'll probably have much issue. This carburetor looks really clean overall. But just a side note for those watching at home. Remember those needles are there because I completely forgot them myself. Alright, moving onwards here. We have our rebuild kit. We're not going to be using all of it, I don't think. I'm going to dump it out up here. I don't necessarily think all the parts necessarily need replaced, but we have the full kit here nevertheless. So let's get our things worked out and around. Looks like everything is there. These off. I don't really think I need these on here anymore. Okay, I guess the first place we'll start is on the back side. So the back side here, we get our needle. Drop our needle down in there. We're going to inspect this for wear. This is the original one. I don't see any wear on it, so I'm not really going to worry about replacing that. We're just going to reuse the OEM one. Spring in. Again, I'm just going to use the OEM one. And my big hands are probably going to be in the way, but I'm going to do my best to show this. So you got to press down on the spring and get this underneath the needle without losing any of it. There we go. I think we might have gotten it. And our retaining screw goes in there. like such. Okay, now it's important to check this tab right here. So they offer the W for Walboro or the Z for Zama. We're working on the Zama here. This is a W19, but I happen to know that it is a C1U carburetor from looking up on the parts diagram. So C1U is written on here, so that means we want that tab to be just barely touching when we do this, which looks like we might have just a little bit too much of a gap. So let me grab a small screwdriver. We're just going to very slightly bend this up just a little bit. I'm going to bend that tab up. There. Now it's just barely dragging on the end of the gauge. So that's what we want. Now then from here, get our gasket. And then our diaphragm. We make sure the diaphragm is going in the correct direction. Got to line up our hole over here. This goes on top like such. And we very carefully try to get everything lined up here. Like so. Hopefully there's not too much background noise for you guys here today. It's raining pretty hard here for us. So you're probably hearing some rain noise and dripping outside, but trying to do my best to minimize that here. Okay, there we go. There's that side rebuilt. Now, moving onward, how does our screen look? I think I'm just going to go ahead and replace the screen. It's usually good practice to do that. I don't know if there's really anything wrong with the original. We did clean it, but I'm just going to not take any chances. We're just going to replace it. Here the actual valve part, or the reed valves part, lays flat against the block like so. Then our gasket goes on top of there like that. Then we should have our cover here. Goes down like so. Then here on top of this, we have our second valve. Goes down on top of here. like so. Have our gasket down on top of that, like so. Have our block goes down on top of that, so we're making up our stack here of valves and gaskets. And we'll have our brand new primer bulb. And then last but not least, our clamp hold down. Then it all gets held together by these screws. So an easy way to kind of check your primer bulb then, to make sure that's working right, particularly if you're not quite sure which direction your lines go back on. So if we press on the ball, we're getting fuel to squirt out here, and we're getting suction over here. So that means our fuel pickup line is going to be this one. That means our fuel pickup line is going to be this one. And our tank vent or tank breather or carburetor breather, whatever you want to say, is going to be this one. So that means our filter goes on this one right here. All right, let's go over to the bench, or the table rather, and take another look over at this saw. Pull our fuel tank off, get our cap out of here, and let's see what kind of goodies await us down here. Alright, a fuel filter, fuel line piece, other than that, not much. Okay. Fuel filter doesn't even hardly look dirty. A little rusty, but not really dirty. Now, there can be a pretty infuriating time when you're trying to replace this fuel line, not going to lie. So I'll show you one of the best ways I've found to do it. It's not going to be easy, and kind of is what it is, but it's the best that I know how to tell you. So what you do first, you take your fuel line and you cut it on an angle. And what you're trying to do is make a point. We're going to cut this back pretty hard. Try to get it out almost starting about as thin as we can get it. Something like that. That's what we're after. Then from there, we can simply push it down into the tank. And then becomes the problem of you got to get around in there to pull it through. So I think what I'm going to do, see if I can't get this one started here. Sometimes you gotta drill the holes out just a little bit. This one here goes in pretty easily. But this one here doesn't look like it's going to. Might have to make that hole a little bit bigger. Might even go just one size bigger yet than that yet. I want to go too big, because the way this works is the fuel line itself seals against the tank. There we go. But sometimes they make them so hard, there's not really much else you can do. Alright, our fuel line's going to fit in there a whole lot easier. Now becomes the chore of reaching in there and pulling this fuel line through. I don't think it's going to be much easier to go from the inside. We could try that. That rarely works well, but it might have to work in this scenario. Let's see here. Such a hard bend. Well, there we go. We got one through. So we just simply pull our fuel line up and through. Let's see about how much do we think we want here. So this one here is going to be the return line. So the return line is up top here, so that's the furthest one away. That'll work. Before we cut that, let's pull it back through. Well, let's pull some back through here if we can. And then we're going to cut it here at the tank side. There. Then we pull this up. So we're almost through, but not quite. We just want a little bit sticking up inside the tank like that. There we go. We cut our end off. The fuel line is ready to be hooked up there. Now, for our in-tank one, looks like we still got enough. So we're going to repeat the exact same process. We're going to cut this on an angle. See if we can get lucky and get this one up through here. There we go, we sure can. Hey, there we go. Alright, we're going to pull this one out to be the same length as the other one. Pretty well equal there. Okay, we can trim off our end. And then for this end, we don't quite need all that. So let's trim off a little bit there. We want our fuel filter to be able to go in and lay in there nicely. So we don't want too much. So I'm going to say something about probably about this long. So let's get that pushed down in there. Yeah, I'd say go with this long. Okay, then we just shove our filter on, like so. All right, pick up this work down into the tank. There we go. Can put our fuel cap back on, keep some dirt out of it. And we got new fuel lines. Now we put our carburetor back on. Alright, so we take our gasket, that one goes there. Can hook up our throttle cable linkage. And I guess we now need to jump in and take a look at our airbox. I'd forgotten that was broke. So let's switch gears for just a second, since our airbox has to bolt on to the carburetor and everything. Let's switch gears and do that. I think our best option is going to be to try some super glue. So I got some of the good stuff, some Gorilla Super Glue. I think this will probably hold. So let's give that a try. See how big of a mess we can make here. The super glue looks like it's going to hold pretty good, but I'm going to add just a little bit more rigidity to it here, if possible. So I'm going to use some of these plastic clips, and we're going to try to add just a little bit more rigidity to this here. I'm going to melt these into place and overlap it there just a little bit. Overlap that joint. Which will help stiffen it up and keep it from breaking again here, hopefully. we go. Not the prettiest ever, I don't suppose, but should hold, and it'll be a whole lot more stiff than it was before, that's for sure. Okay, we should be ready to put our carburetor back on now, so let's hop over there and do that. Okay, we should be good to throw this all back together over here. So let's start with our bolt side. That's going to make it a whole lot easier. So let's grab our bolts. We're going to stick them through like so. Got our outer gasket here like so. And we got our carburetor. Like so. We got our backside gasket. Like so. Flip it all around. We'll hook up our throttle cable. And with a little bit of luck, we'll thread this all back together. Alright, everything's nice and tight there. Alright, now for our fuel lines. So if we recall, this top one is our return. So that was our front line. So that goes on here, like such. And then our filtered line goes right down below it. Like such. Fuel lines are maybe just a little bit long. I might end up cutting them just a little bit shorter, but for the moment it'll work. Alright, back on this side then. Everything's looking good. I like the way that's on there pretty nice and tight, so I like that. Have our new air filter, and of course these get oiled. So put a little bit of oil on there. Keep your hands cleaner. Throw it in a bag. So the purpose of the oil is to grab dust. So you don't want it so oily that it acts like a restriction. You don't want to restrict the airflow, but you want to filter it. So we put oil in there, soaks it up, take it out, and then we press out any remaining we might have. We don't want too much. That looks good, so we can go ahead and stuff that in our filter hole. we can close up shop. Let's see how well we did. And add a little bit of fuel and let's see if it'll run. Alright, let's see if our primer bulb's going to work here. Here we go, we got fuel coming up through our filtered line. Here we go. It's going around. Alright, moment of truth. Will it run? Put our choke down on start. Switch is on. Here we go. It's for the gold. It's not very happy. Going to try opening up our low side of the carburetor a little bit. So let's go ahead and screw it in. I want to see how far in we are right now. So let's see. Barely a turn. So let's go 1 turn. Let's open it up 2 turns. Let's get a little daring. See if that makes any difference here. Alright, I'll take it. Seems like it's just needs a little bit more fine tuning here yet. Gonna give it just a little bit more low end throttle to help keep it running, and let's see if that makes any difference. Well, that sounds amazing. That's running really, really nice. I'm very happy with that. We'll have to fine tune it once we get the saw attachment on the end. But I am very, very happy and impressed with how that came out. So I guess let's shorten this one fuel line up here just a little bit. And then we can move on with inspecting some of the rest of it here. So I'm going to cut off, oh, I'm going to say probably about that much. There we go. I think this one here we can cut a little bit off here too, on the return side. There we go. That's better. I'm happy with that. I'm going to put a new spark plug in here since they asked me to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. We're just going to go ahead and change it out. Probably doesn't necessarily need it right now, but it would be better for them if it was. So we're just going to change it out. Now that we know it runs, and it runs well. Got a brand new Champion right here, ready for it. Alright, our gap for this is supposed to be 25 thousandths, which we are definitely not gapped that. We're not even 10 thousandths. There we go. A little strong. Tap it on a table to get it back down. 30. There we go. Strong 25. That should work just fine. Alright, does it still run? Yep, still runs, just needs a little bit of tuning. We'll handle that, we can handle that. Alrighty, well there we go. It does run and it does work. And to be honest with you, everything seems to function as best as I can test it out here at the minute. So it is about 10 o'clock at night when I'm filming this video right now, and raining, pitch black outside, so I'm not going to be able to test this right now. But I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a part 2, and we will go over the tuning of a 2-cycle and how you would tune a 2-cycle engine for chainsaw work in this case. So we're gonna go over that. We're gonna go over tuning it. We'll go over testing it out. And we'll go over sharpening the chain on the pole saw end of things. But as far as the engine goes, the carburetor's been rebuilt. Looks like everything's pretty good and good to go. So we're just going to turn this into a part 1, and next video will be the part 2 to kind of tying this all together. So we'll just do it that way. But thank you guys very much for stopping by to watch. I appreciate it. It's always good to have you guys here. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know your experience with 2-cycles carburetors and if they rebuild good for you or not. Hit that like button. It does really help out the channel, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss any future content, particularly part 2 of this pole saw series, I guess we're gonna call it. So that being said, that's all I got for you guys tonight. We will see you on the next video.